Sure, hindsight's a wonderful thing. There's always something to be learned from what we've done before. But going further than the Development Act expects of us in terms of seeking the views of other people who are going to be involved in living in that community, for first occupancy rights to be considered. In lots of ways, the future is more in the hands of the legal changes that can occur rather than the things that council can do differently. The right time for this debate is when you're writing policy for an area, not when you're doing an assessment of a particular development, because you very much then are required to act within the constraints of the legislation, yes. I certainly would expect that both live entertainment and development would thrive in our city. That would be our goal. Certainly the council recognises that the Governor Hindmarsh Hotel is one of the major live entertainment venues in the City of Adelaide, that the Gov is one of the key businesses that we would want to be supporting.
Well, we're in a situation where a developer has just got permission through our DAC law, which meets in secret, has no need to notify you, and to which you have got no right of appeal, to do a housing block at the rear of the hotel. Developer says to potential buyers, look, there's a problem here, but don't worry, we can fix it. Well, because only one person needs to complain, and the licensing court will act on the point of that one decision, bring people around on a quiet day and say, look, what lovely surroundings, what a great little trendy pub to drink at, but no one's going to tell them that, hey, this place has got a 3 o'clock in the morning licence. Once this DAC committee meets, which is every council has got a branch of it, their decision is final. There's no right of appeal to it. There's no need to even reveal that decision to the public. In the case of the Grace Emily, if the council reject the application, the lawyers have looked at the Act and said, oh, look, we can just ignore the council. We'll go to the Supreme Court and have this overruled. We'll sue them for costs. We'll sue them for hindering our development.
The situation is that we won all the council's votes bar one at the Development Assessment Committee hearing. The developer then took it the next step and it takes it to a High Court, which is he's taking the Adelaide Council's decision to the High Court. It never had a complaint. We've ran the business how we've wanted to run it. It's not a loud music venue, but the decibel readings that you're permitted are at such a level that you can't talk too loudly without a complaint. So once we get a 106 slapped on us, then that'll be the ball game.
The first people in the world to be faced with this dilemma, which is basically a conflict between land uses. It's not original, it's happened all over the world in every inner city area where there's been a change in the way we use the CBDs. Everywhere in the world there's been an increasing residential infill into CBD areas, and always when that happens there's going to be conflict. There is an issue that can't always be dealt with just by having sound attenuation, thicker glass, better doors, because it's a street issue as well. People don't just materialise in a live music venue. They have to get there, they come by car, they leave, they go with their friends, they laugh, they joke. So they will say we can put in sound attenuation, they can say we will put double glazing, they can say we will put special measures into the pub, we will sponsor that. But the reality is they're not going to be there in 5 years' time when the noise complaints, the EPA requirements are in force, and they may not be the ones who are actually complaining. Once you've sold it on, those new residents will have an expectation when they buy in that they can live there quietly. The corner of North Terrace and West Terrace, that's the Newmarket Hotel, and they actually had amazing foresight, because when the last plan review was being enacted, they put a lot of time and energy into lobbying to point out that it was an unsuitable place for residential development, and the land uses around that pub were changed in order to produce a buffer zone. But in fact, if that had been enacted across the city, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. The way of solving the problem has been used before. There is a precedent, and clearly it's the way to go.
Brian Tonkin was the licensee here in the 70s, and he was one of the original people to set up live music at the Bridgewater Inn in the 70s. We actually withdrew. We made the decision to withdraw live amplified music from the hotel. The last band, which was a local band, played here on the 30th of June due to the pressure we were receiving from local residents, particularly their complaints to liquor licensing.
Received a registered mail from the council solicitors summoning me to a meeting. The date hasn't been set at liquor licensing for a 106, which means a noise complaint. We've actually complied, but because the EPA has so much discretion, so much grey area, we don't know where we stand because we feel as though we were told, make the adjustment. We made the adjustment, we're doing it, but we then get summons to... I would have to fight that because there's no business here without live bands. We were doing live bands Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and I was doing them on Sundays, but we've cut back to Friday and Saturday. Recently just sent a letter off to the person who was complaining about, and it was the crowd that just moved from here and walked down to the Crown and Anchor, down to Rundle Street now.
Residential development already completed across the road, and there's one happening on this side now as well. There aren't any problems currently, although there certainly is fear for the future that perhaps when there are residents so close that there might be. We need to look carefully at better insulating the rooms, perhaps a balcony or a veranda out that side, that kind of thing. It's certainly going to mean expense for us. Developers aren't sort of really interested in compromise. I suppose they have a goal to meet, and I don't really think that the hotels come into the equation. You know, if there is no compromise, there is no future. A hotel like this couldn't become a pokie venue, wouldn't become a pokie venue. Without venues like this, there's an element of the city that really couldn't be replaced by anything else.
An emerging problem. It's one that's going to get bigger because all of local government is committed to urban consolidation, which means we're going to double up on the number of houses on sites. We're going to try and bring more people either back into the city or into the suburbs close to the city. So it's something that is beginning to show, and it's going to get worse. Adelaide City Council had adopted a policy which meant, and does mean, I believe this is still the case, that when a new occupier took over any of the current places of entertainment, that new rules would apply as far as noise levels were concerned, including after 1:30 in the morning there could be no live music other than, and the example was given, a 3-piece jazz combo. And the recent decision by Adelaide City Council regarding the Austral Hotel, if a development complies with the Development Act, and that one did, the council really has no choice. If they make the decision to oppose it, then they have to be prepared to pay out a lot of money for lawyers' fees and court fees because almost inevitably the proponent is going to take them to court if the council has knocked back a complying use in a complying area. I expect that within the next month or two we will see some draft amendments to the Planning Act and probably find us in Parliament dealing with them end of September. One of the things that will seriously have to be looked at is making those laws retrospective back to the Austral Hotel's decision. If they have the rallies, if they have the petitions, if they have the letter writing all the way up to election date, yes, they can make it an issue. As it stands, live music's going to lose out. That's as it stands. But I don't think it has to be that way. The Queensland legislation says that prior occupancy has to be a consideration if there is any dispute.
It's not a new thing that there's been a lot of noise, a lot of entertainment and buzzy music. It's not just an issue of how you build the buildings, it's an issue of coexistence, of prior occupancy, if you like. I mean, I think that we always expect in particular parts of Adelaide, in the metropolitan part of Adelaide, that some kind of late night venues have been there for many, many years. And, you know, it's always been known to have a lot of loud music. As a potential government, the Labor Party would want to see the viability of live music. It's like if I moved into the middle of the city, I would not expect to have a quiet environment. If I wanted a really quiet environment, I'd move into the hills somewhere.
I think South Australia has got a chance to show the rest of Australia how it can be done.
That state government, whose responsibility it is, should set reasonable norms, but it should be set at a level that is reasonable to achieve.
Our staff have had a look at the submissions that the Australian Hotel Association have made on this issue, and in fact there is a remarkable similarity in many of the aims and ambitions.
You know, it's a very big issue, and it's one that the politicians and the planners have to sit down and look at and make decisions accordingly. There has to be a live music scene. There has to be places where people and kids want to go.
Adelaide's had a tradition, especially in the band scene, from the 60s and 70s. Most of the great bands in Australian music came from Adelaide, from the Zoot, the Twilights, the Masters Apprentices. You know, that's like 3 of the 4 top bands in the 60s.
It is the soul of our society to have a music of its own. And it takes generations to develop that music, and we have to have public exposure for these young musicians so they can develop their music and people can relate to it.
The Liquor Licensing Act, one person can make the complaint effectively and could close the joint down.